Hello, dear listener, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast. My name is Chris, and I'm very lucky to be joined today by Danny Graves. Hey, Danny, how are you, sir?
Hello, Christopher. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you very much, kind sir. And we're also very, very lucky and privileged to have Walt back. Hey, Walt, how are you, sir?
Hi, Chris. How you going? G'day, Danny. Good to see you.
All the way from the other side of the planet. It's a weird experience, to be fair.
And we're a whole year apart, right?
Well, yeah, that's right. We are. Absolutely.
Oh my God. Are you ahead of us or are you behind us?
Oh, come on, Danny. We're ahead of you, okay?
Great. So what happens in
so
the
many
future?
ways.
Sorry?
He's in the past. He's in 2023 still for another nearly hour.
You're 12 hours ahead of us. You know what's going to happen 12 hours in the future. You're like our modern Martin McFly.
Yeah. Look, what can I say? it gets better, all right? That's all I can say.
Thanks, man.
And the good news is, dear listener, this episode has gone sideways so quickly, the pressure is off. So
it's a time-traveling Kings of War.
Thank you so much for joining me for this Mup Shorts narrative special for your New Year, guys. I very much appreciate it. I'm actually sitting, as we're recording, I'm actually sitting in my mum's hobby room, which is very different from my hobby room. Far fewer goblins. Super. So, dear listener, we're here to talk about narrative gaming. So the Mup Short I recorded with Walt dropped yesterday, and I just had a lovely, lovely old time playing with Danny a couple of days ago, dear listener. So it just seemed like the perfect opportunity to get both these guys on who are, let's be honest, I mean, you're both very modest, but two of the best narrative gamers in all of Mantic, I would say. You know, you're right up there, you're top shelf.
So you say that, honestly, but that is one of the first times I've actually ever done narrative gaming in Panathor. But
that's
I've done a lot.
Let's get on to, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. So let's get into that a little bit later. So let's very quickly do our little housekeeping bit. So dear listener, if you enjoy what you're hearing, believe it or not, people do. Please give us a 5-star review wherever you're listening to this. It really helps us with the algorithm, whatever that means. More people get to hear us, so that would be great. If you still haven't used it, the Mantic web store discount code is Universe15. It's 1 per customer, so fill your boots. And if you go to the Baron of Dice website, use the code Mantic Universe for a 5% discount. And I was proudly using my Baron of Dice 2 days ago. Danny, what did you think of my dice?
They're quite nice.
They are very nice.
What I always want to see
enthusiastic about this
is I can actually see what's on the dice. Beautiful big grey ones with big black dots on. I could see exactly what you were rolling all the time. So long as that's there, I'm happy.
Perfect. Super. And dear listener, get yourself over to Corvus Terrain for lovely STL files. Anyway, 3D printing files. I'm putting the code MUPodcast15 for 15% off. Thank you very much. And as it's New Year and I'm feeling very sentimental, I just wanted to say again a huge thank you to Fred, who has taken over the editing of MUP. And I'll be honest with you, I tried listening to an old episode that I edited a couple of weeks ago. I literally couldn't get through it because of the weird noises, terrible sound quality, random music very loudly suddenly appearing. It's Fred, thank you so much, buddy. You are the secret hero of MUP, and we very much appreciate what you do. It's made a huge difference. So thank you very much for that. Super. So let's move on to talking about narrative gaming, guys. So yes. So first, dear listener, I'll refer you to our previous episode. That was episode 33. I recorded with Walt. And Walt came out with some absolutely fascinating stuff about putting gamers in 4 different categories, depending on what their main incentive is for playing games. So there are gamers who just want to win. There are gamers who want to see someone else lose. There are gamers who play because of the friendships and the community, which is probably me. You know, that's probably my main motivation. And then there are, I think, the diamonds, if I'm remembering it right, players who play because of the narrative and how the story of the game unfolds. And so that's what we want to just dig into a little bit, dear listener. And we have the perfect example because Danny, 2 days ago, I played 3 games of Ambush with Danny, and he came up with a brilliant little story. So I just wanted to unpack that a little bit and help the dear listener if you're interested in any of this, but you're a little bit nervous, which is totally understandable. I don't want to put myself out there, and just we can explain the process behind it, what we did, how the battles went, what that meant for the story, and just have a lovely old time talking about toy soldiers. How does that sound, guys?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah, fine.
Nice, super. So, Danny, you are very well known with the community, but maybe we just quickly start with who is Danny Graves? And you go to a lot of tournaments. You're a good player. You're a writer. Where do you start with that?
How far do you want me to go back, Chris? I started when I was little, and I saw an advert for Hero Quest on the TV, and obviously growing up in the 80s, you're getting to watch stuff like Beast Slayer and He-Man and Transformers, Thundercats, all the really cool stuff. And that's just always stayed with me. So after Hero Quest, got into Space Crusade, and we had Battle Masters, as reading fighting fantasy books. And this was like the late 80s. I think Death Trap Dungeon was my first one. Worked my way through all of them. And in the front of one of those books was a little thing saying, hey, if you like these, check out White Dwarf magazine. And then that's what kicked me into wargaming. I think it was episode 128 of White Dwarf, which was May 1990, something literally that far back. And that just kick-started me, and I've been doing it ever since.
Oh, did you take a break? Did you do the classic during your 20s, you were embarrassed and come back to it later, or did you just plow on through?
I've never been embarrassed, Chris. Never in my entire life. But I did stop because at some point in my life, beer and girls and rock and roll just seemed way much more fun. But then I was dancing in a nightclub and broke my foot. And I was just sat around at my mother's board. I was like, I've got nothing to do. I was like, still got the zombies up on that shelf, so I got them down painting it. Next thing I knew, a few weeks later, I was hobbling into the local Games Workshop. Next thing I knew, I was working for Games Workshop for 4 years in retail. And once I did that, I just carried on playing Horus Heresy, 40k, Warhammer, until the old world exploded in a shower of poo. And I played AOS for a few months, found out it was terrible. And a mate put me onto Kings of War. One of the local shops was doing it. I was the only person who turned up for the demo day. So I sat there painting the shop Kings of War dwarf models all day on my own. Some guy came in at dinner time, gave me like a half an hour game. Obviously playing Warhammer for so long, it's just like, wow, it's quite easy. Just did a local tournament and then went straight on to my first Clash of Kings over in Cardiff. That was 2016 or 17. And I've been doing it ever since.
Amazing. Fantastic. So we were playing 3 games of Ambush anyway. And obviously playing Ambush because that way you can just get more games in, right? And it lets you do more things. It was really, really great. So I brought my army over from Germany, although I forgot the game mat, which drove me absolutely crazy. I brought everything except for the mat. And Danny messaged me to say, do I need to bring anything? And I was like, no, I've got all the terrain and everything. So, oh, no, what have I done? But I was absolutely delighted to see Danny had just come up with this little bit of story for the games. So maybe, Danny, you can talk a little bit about what inspired you to. So you mentioned earlier in the pod that you'd actually never done this before. So what inspired you to just take the leap and put pen to paper?
Well, I've never done it in Panathor before, but when I was working at Games Workshop, obviously every week we've got all these kids coming into the shop going, yeah, frothing. What are we doing? What are we playing? Are we playing a big game? Are we doing this? Are we doing that? And for 4 years, I've had to entertain those kids with that level of energy. And you have to come up with cool stuff on the spot. You have to come up with mini campaigns that are simple enough to keep them entertained. They've got to be so all the kids can join in. So all that stuff I had to do daily as a job. And when you said you're coming over for a game, it's just Ambush. Well, I'm not driving all that way down to see you on the South Coast just for one game. So we'll probably do about 3. And I remember listening to you and Clem, and you were like, oh, yeah, Clem did all this background stuff for this game, and it's so brilliant. Oh, I loved it, and this and that. And I was like, oh, I'll do a little one for Chris because he loves stuff like this.
So I was the kid. Yeah, so
you
I
were
was
the kid, Chris.
To entertain.
You were the proper kids coming into Games Workshop.
Perfect. So, I suppose your starting point was, well, Chris, what army Chris is bringing, and you asked me, who's your leader and what are they called?
Yep. So,
and then you took that information, although I actually asked you to name my leader for me because I thought that was much cooler.
Big mistake, Chris. Big mistake.
Yeah. So you took that information, Danny, and what did you do next?
Well, I was like, what army do I want to bring along? And I was like, well, to be honest, doing 3 games might be a bit boring, so I'll bring 3 different armies to give you more of an experience of playing different things. When it's at ambush level, it can often get to the point where you're playing the same game over and over and over again if you've got the same forces. So I thought I'll bring 3 different ones. So I wrote a couple of lists just quickly. I was like, that's quite good fun. How can we tie all this together? So looking at your race, your Twilight Kin, you've come across the seas from Germany. So you've invaded the coast with your Twilight Kin, so we can do that. So I found a little area of the map that had the straits, like about as wide as the English Channel. I was like, we can do it there. What's the local geography? Well, that's too big a city. It's the city of Sparta. That's a bit too big for an ambush game. So I'll make up a little village a little bit further south.
Yeah, I think if we went to Sparta, we'd be arrested by the local Basilian magistrate or something like that. Yeah.
So you've always got to keep those, even though it's short and it's simple, you've got to have those things to make it realistic in your brain. So an ambush game is village sized. We'll stick with the village. The village needs a name, so I called it Junos because a lot of the Basilian things have names like, Julia. So slight Roman
named after the angels, right? The Elohi.
Yeah, so Junos will do. And it's only a little ambush game. If it's a rubbish name, it doesn't matter. You never have to hear it again in your entire life. So long as you're having fun. I think we mentioned it once in the entire the day. So if you do something wrong or there's an aspect of your narratives that's bad, just ignore it. It's fine.
To me, there's no wrong answers though. As long as you're having fun, that's it. Yeah. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. And what I think,
but it does matter. It does matter if it's really stupid and it grates on you. And if somebody says, "Hey, I'm going to have," he's going to be Mr. Sparkly Twinklebum is going to be my character's name. It's just like, that doesn't really fit. And then you've got the guy going, Sparkly Twinklebum for the entire day.
So what I would say
ruining the immersion for me.
At the beginning, you need to talk to your opponent and make sure you're on the same page. And if one of you wants to call your character Sparkly Twinklebum and the other one wants to take it quite serious, quote unquote, seriously, then you need to compromise on that or play with somebody else. Yeah.
You basically have a bubble of narrative that everything has to fit into, and if you go outside of that bubble,
calling a character Sparkly Twinklebum, it can be funny, but that's not going to be canon, is it, in any which way? And it can break the immersion of the other person because I feel like that could very quickly tip over into taking the mick out of the other, there's just not a comfortable place to be. But if you both want to call the characters Sparkly Twinklebum, go at it. But what I think both of you are fantastic at and really came across is in the narrative you guys write, whether it's the orcs or the Twilight Kin or whatever, or the Basilians, is you guys really nail the character of the armies you're talking about in the little bit of work you do, and I think that's super important. It makes a huge difference to me. And sorry, Walt, we are talking a lot, and we will continue to talk a lot.
But no, please do. I'm finding this totally interesting, and Danny, I know exactly where you're coming from. It's sort of like listening to a recording of yourself. So a lot of the ideas you're talking about and how you create your narrative, it's refreshing to hear. Look, can I just ask a quick question? I mean, obviously, Chris was ready to come over. How long did it take you to create this? Once you guys started talking, did you do it in an afternoon, or how long did it take you to do?
Generally, I'll just have a few ideas flicking back in my head. It's like, it'd be nice to do this. How would I do it? no major sit down, I need to write this narrative. It's like one little train of thought leading on to another. I literally just took out my phone, took out the Pages app, wrote a few sentences. I'll come back to it later. Some of it I wrote on the toilet. Some of it I sat on the sofa watching World's Strongest Man qualifiers. Some I wrote in bed while my girlfriend's reading before we go to sleep. It just kind of turned up. And sometimes you'll get stuck and be like, oh, what name do I want to put? So I'll just put 4 big X's and I'll come back to it later. So
nice.
So my flow keeps going and I get most of it down and I can just come and plug little gaps and I'll read it all over at the end and go, well, that doesn't quite fit. Just change a little bit here and we're good to go.
But for you, the game's already started, right? And you writing that narrative, the fun's already started for you, hasn't it? I mean, really. Yeah.
Well, I say, because I write some of the novels for Wing to Tsar, so I'm quite into the Panathor lore and the ideas and the thoughts and how do you write this and what's this character? How does this person fit in this world? Where do they live? What do they eat? So I've always got this constant churn of ideas and thoughts about different Panathor races and different science fiction races, and because all through like real life, all through different science fiction franchises, there's good stuff in everything, and you can cherry pick little ideas from all of them. You don't have to wholesale bring like massive theologies over, but just little thoughts and feelings you can bring over and just put into characters and just flesh them out. So to write something in Panathor with a narrative, you basically, like I say, you've got that bubble and everything within that bubble is Panathor, and you just squeezing that bubble down until you've got this tiny little pinprick bubble with all your thoughts in for this campaign at this time with these characters, and that's what you're doing.
Yeah, correct.
So you're taking a huge, that's brilliant, Danny. So you're taking a big amount of information and then just slowly but surely whittling it down to be very, very focused. So as you say, you know, who's there, the characters, the time, the location, and all that important information is tied down. When I wrote the Signal campaign for Firefight, it was just purely Rob Bowman's short story had me so interested in this idea of a plague general who has more of his intelligence and what that might mean. And so I was thinking, what might he do next? And then, of course, thinking, well, what factions are going to be playing in the game? Although that didn't matter so much. It was fairly interchangeable. I easily could have winged it, why the Asterians are there or why the, whatever, the Enforcers or whoever. But to me, it was just that starting point, that kernel of an idea was somebody else's, right? It was just, well, this is really interesting and I want to kind of explore this with our game. So, however, I think, dear listener, however you get there, and what I did was I started writing some basic ideas. I think within about 10, 15 minutes, I had the very, very rough idea of what I wanted to do. And then, if I was going for a walk or I just had a bit of time to myself, I found myself just thinking about it and coming up with ideas. And I thought, well, they're all coming down to this planet. Well, wouldn't it be nice if one of them was shot down, and they crash landed and then the battle is within their kind of derelict spaceship, the crashed spaceship, and ideas just sort of come to you and some of them get swept aside, some of them don't work, but, we're not, these things don't have to make forensic sense, right? We're not,
no,
we are purely having fun. Perfect. So Danny, can I ask you please, would you be kind enough to read out the opening bit of fiction you wrote? So this is basically the bit that kicks us off. So we're there preparing for our first battle.
On the coast of Basilia, in the deep south near the Straits of Sparta, lies the village of Junos, protected by the Paladin Order of the Celestial Grove and its attendant men-at-arms. High Paladin Daniel is sworn to defend the folk of the land and is beset by the vampire Gradesh and his ghoulish coterie, who are slaughtering farmsteads and travellers. The area is in chaos and confusion and ripe for plunder. Hearing of the conflict, the Twilight King's ship, the Daughter of Blackness, under the command of the Void Captain Krithomar, decides to take advantage, but runs aground in conflict with the Trident Realms, who are defending the coast. With their ship trapped, Krithomar presses on regardless, but immediately comes into contact with Likoti Split, the River Guard captain charged with protecting the coast. He has roused his kin and the local creatures to face down the invaders.
Yes.
Dum, dum, dum.
So from there, that was, Danny, I tell you what, that was beyond my wildest dreams. Amazing. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
The writing is just fantastic. It's so good. So Danny, and let's let you have a little drink to recover from that. So what was the scenario for the first game?
So the first game was plunder, because they're
plundering.
They come to plundering.
Makes perfect sense.
And it was on the coast.
Makes perfect sense. So let's talk a little bit about the game and how that then led into the narrative, the next bit of narrative in the story. So I actually think, Danny, I started as the Twilight Kin. I started okay. I moved up the board, got the tokens. You'd set up a horrible trap for me, which I didn't take the bait. I actually backed up. But I think I got a bit unlucky. I charged out my Void Skiffs, if you remember, against your Tree Leaper type fellas. I forget exactly what they're called. But I really, really needed to kill them. And I did a disappointing amount of wounds. So you were still in combat. So then I got a giant leaping frog in the flank, then suddenly doing 10 attacks, not 5 attacks.
With brutal.
With brutal. You also took off my, I think you took off my, what's he called? My Impaler hero, big Impaler, scary fella. And at that point, I'd lost my Thunderous Charge 2 thing and my Crushing Strength 2 thing. And you had 2 units of Gigas, which are big shields. So I kind of managed to do 3 or 4 wounds to most things, but not enough to kill them. And to be honest, after that point, I started pretty well. I think that's fair to say, right, Danny? But then from that point on, I just collapsed. Didn't have enough Crushing Strength or anything to take things off. And you just sort of slowly but surely ground me down. And the Gigas, I think they've only got 6 attacks, but they're 6 really good attacks.
Crush 2, hitting on Crush with Vicious.
The Vicious makes a big difference. Really reliable. And the ensnare. So I had Corsairs. I had 2 troops of Corsairs. They hit on 4s with Elite, which is pretty darn good. But then with ensnare, they're suddenly hitting on 5s. It's a rough day, isn't it? With only Crush.
But then
1.
they have the Crush 1, which compensates. So it balances out.
So but and let's say, dear listener, if it's not clear already, Danny is a very good player, and I'm a mediocre player. Is putting it kindly. So that was a crushing. So we got off our boats and then wished we picked another beach to raid, right?
Yep, you got slapped by a big fat frog.
Yes, that. And some scary crabs. I'm just sort of imagining them just sort of poking their heads out of the sand, as we're all getting off. They hear the footprints, they feel the vibrations. And we very much regretted getting off our boats. So, Danny, what happened then with the story?
So with the story, I thought, well, we could just do 3 in a row with some narrative between, or we could do whoever wins gets a little bit of a bonus in the next game, just keep it fun. So if the Twilight Kin won that, they would capture some of the Thule and the Gigas, all the ferocious sea creatures, as they do with the Void creatures, and they could then throw them at the enemy. So like the Void Wrangler rule, Tormentor Unleashed. So instead of releasing Reapers, they could release Thule at people. So I thought that'd be quite good fun. So if the Twilight Kin won, one unit gets the Tormentor Unleashed special rule in game 2. And if the Trident Realms win, the objectives in the next game would be count as Aegis fragments for Basilians controlling them, which gets us on to game 2.
Perfect. And perfect. Danny, would you mind just reading the next bit of the story?
Learning of the fresh enemy from the coast, yet loath to leave the village undefended against the undead, High Paladin Danielle orders the placing of Aegis fragments to create a holy barrier to hold them back. While she is enacting this plan, that the Basilians are come upon by the dastardly Corsairs. Now, this is a good example of stealing an idea and putting it into your narrative, because in the end times in Warhammer, they created a holy barrier around Sylvania to keep all the vampires in, using holy icons and spells. So I've taken the Basilian holy icons, the Aegis fragments, I've stolen that idea, and they're going to plant them around the village to create a holy barrier to keep the undead out. So that's just a really good example. You're like, that's a good idea, I'm having that. So for this game, we play a pillage, so it'd be an objective-based game, and if my Basilians were controlling one of those objectives for that game, they get a free Aegis fragment, which improves their iron resolve. As it turned out, this didn't come up at all in the game, so completely irrelevant.
But what's funny as well, Danny, is in general, the way the game is played now, I'm not interested at all in Basilians, because it seems like all people play is the Angels and the Palace Guard. And to me, they'd be in the capital. There'd be hardly any of them, and they'd only go for the most important battles. They wouldn't, you wouldn't have hordes of Elohi at every single battle. To me, that's nuts. And what's interesting, and I think what we were talking about it a little bit on the last podcast, dear listener, is this idea of, well, the other stuff, the people, trying to desperately hold things together when they have quite a corrupt and selfish government, but it's just people doing their best with what they have. To me, that's super, super interesting. And that's exactly what you've come up with here, Danny. And I absolutely loved it. So the Twilight Kin. So we were coming in and fighting against a very balanced and mixed Basilian force. And I don't, did we mention all these games were 750 points of ambush, dear listener?
Yeah. I noticed that, Chris. I noticed that. I had a look at those lists, and they're 750 points. And, the unit selection in them, I was so impressed by it, because they weren't over the top. They were really driven by the narrative that you'd written, Danny. Yeah. And I thought, how cool is that? The good thing about this is, as narrative players, we can enjoy now the whole range of miniatures, not just the top tier miniatures that you see at tournaments. You can, the storyline allows you to take those units that you've always wanted to paint up, but they never come out of the cupboard. So I like it. 750 points, and a lot of it was pretty basic sort of stuff, right? Yeah. Well, in fact, the first game, how many heroes did you have in the first game?
I had a Naiad Stalker, and I was a bit gamey with this. I gave him the Gnome Glass Shield for the first round. And in a regular Kings of War game, they're all right, but put her in an ambush game with that regen and that ensnare and that nerve and the self-inspiring and the Gnome Glass Shield, you can just stick her into anything and she'll survive, hold that flank up for a couple of turns.
I had a Riverguard Sentinel, and I was lucky to pop her.
Yeah, I was expecting her to stick around for another turn, and then I've got the Dam Buster, and he's brilliant because he can fly. He's basically just having a frog on a frog, just bouncing all over the battlefield. It's brilliant fun, so I took that one as well. And I called him Liquor Tea Split.
Yeah, I picked up on that.
And I had in my list, I had two heroes. So I had the Soulbane Impaler, the big hulking guy, who is super cool. And I think he's defense 4, which is his terrible weakness, but, which balances him out, because other than that, he's absolutely amazing.
Beast.
9 attacks. If you get him in the flank, 9 amazing attacks, hitting on 3s, re-rolling 1s with elites, and crush 2. He's fantastic, isn't he? I think I'll struggle against good players, but I'll struggle against good players anyway. Danny very much is a good player. Super. And it was, so, and I think your Basilian army, you had a troop of cavalry, you had a troop of Ger Panthers. I think you had, was it 2 regiments of kind of spear blokes?
Yes, 2 regiments of spearmen.
And you had a hero, a mounted hero, lady on a horse.
Yep. High Paladin Danielle.
and you had the beautiful, not upgraded Phoenix, I think, who was a
basic Phoenix.
Just the basic.
To be honest, that is quite
basic.
A gamey model, but it's just gorgeous, and I wanted it on the table, so I took it.
It's my favourite Mantic model. I think that was a disaster for me. It was the shooting attack on that, and the nimble and being able to get around the table, the speed and everything was just a nightmare. But I had a go at the Void Skiffs, had a go at shooting at the giant flaming chicken. We gave it a go, didn't we, Danny?
Yeah.
You know.
Regen 4+, man, you can't beat it.
Yeah. Well, I certainly couldn't beat it, that's for sure. That game, because I think actually, because my two troops of my Corsairs have Phalanx, so I think that was a trickier matchup for you. But to be honest, you just played really well. Like you are a much better player than me. But I think in that game, it just showed you played really well. I actually think in the 3 games I played pretty well. I mean, particularly for me, that's good. Played all right. But I think it was a bad matchup for you, but you're the better player, and so you won. That's I think that's a fair thing to say. So I didn't really get a look in that second game, I think, to be honest. At no point did I think, oh, maybe. Because in the first game, I think for the first sort of 30% of the game, I was in the game and then it fell away from me. Whereas the second game, I felt like you were always in control of the situation, if you know what I mean.
Well, with the Brazilian one, you took out my spearmen in one charge, and my other regiment went into your Void Skiffs and bounced. And then all I had to do was a couple of wounds on them to finish them off. And my Phoenix didn't even cause 1 wound. So turns 3 and 4, it was looking a bit dicey. But
that was incredibly bad luck, though. I think you rolled something like 5 dice and you just needed a 4. You didn't get a single 4 on 5 dice. That was incredibly unlucky.
Yeah.
And your 4 attack captain took off the Go Panthers in one go as well. So
my 4 attack captain is amazing. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
So what would have happened if the Basileans had lost it, Danny? What would have happened? Where would the story have taken us?
So if the Basilians lost, they would retreat and fortify the village, denying the undead their final assault. Weary from attempting to cross the holy barrier, they are easy pickings for the Twilight Kin, and the effect would be that all undead lose their life leech 1. So they've been weakened by trying to get through the holy barrier, they're tired, they're exhausted, they lose the life leech. However, if the Basilians win, watching the Basilian victory from afar, Gravesh realizes he does not have the strength or forces to take the village of Junos, nor the Paladin fort. Instead, he sees the fleeing Twilight Kin and sees easy pickings. He tears after them with his cannibal whore to sate his rage. All undead gain life leech +1, and Gravesh swaps his profile to the blood rage option.
Nice.
So,
Mantic Games, minis all the year. Morgoth's mad and Jarvis is good and undead still OP. Night Stalkers, Northern Alliance, what's your favourite race? Clem Lonely, play 10 mil and Mantic fits the bill. Hooray!
I don't know if you've ever seen the film. I think it's 30 Days of Night. It's like a small village up in Alaska. They're struggling to survive, and all these cannibal vampires just descend on it and tear everybody to pieces. So I kind of had that in my head. So get the extra life leech to make them look more ravenous. Had a lot of ghouls and a vampire in my host. And I gave Gravesh, obviously my name's Daniel Graves, so I called my High Paladin Danielle because she's a girl. And my vampire was Gravesh, as Chris's captain was called Chris Tomar. So if you say Chris Thomas with a lisp, you've pretty much got it. So Gravesh, he got swapped his profile to being Crush 3, Defense 4, and Life Leech 3, just to represent him being a ravenous psychotic. And this game went horrifically bad for me. Take it away, Chris.
I've got to be honest, Danny. At this point, I was feeling, and the story made it pointedly so. I thought, got to have our ships. We've been slaughtered by on the beach. We've been massacred. We've somehow made it to the local town where we've been slaughtered by the local garrison forces, and then we're running back to our ships, being pursued by the undead. We've had a horrible holiday. We've had a dreadful time. I've lost my passport. Yeah, Merry Christmas. Absolutely. We're these big, scary, dark, evil elves, and let's get out of it, guys.
Chris, you're just not going to take any more of it, are you? I mean, you're Twilight Kin. I mean, that's enough is enough. I mean, seriously.
Enough is enough. Enough is enough. And at this point, Danny had taken this absolutely wonderfully thematic undead list. You had a load of, and Danny, sorry, help me out with this. You had a load of ghouls. You had your, as we mentioned, your named hero who was, just an absolute machine.
Well, you never see vampire lords in big games because everybody's like, oh, he needs to be on a horse, so you've got to take the special characters. So having something small and narrative is a perfect chance to get really cool models on the table and stuff you wouldn't usually take because it's a narrative game. Who cares if you win or lose? So took an old Vlad von Carstein model, had a regiment of ghouls, 2 troops of ghouls, and a ghoul ghast, so giving them all Thunderous 1 from the aura. And then just to finish out, I had a troop of wraiths and a regiment of zombies just to fill the list out. So I ran out of ghouls.
So it was was that the reason? So it was ghouls. They're super hitty, they're super scary, particularly with the Thunder 1, and they're fast, deceptively fast too.
Yeah,
but they are very glass cannon, aren't they?
Yeah. So I just didn't pop anything on my charge and then died.
Yeah. So I sort of had a bit of a defensive line. As Danny said, he went in. I don't think you could quite go in with everything you wanted to.
No, I sacrificed a unit of ghouls first up to hold you there and then piled in. Unfortunately, I didn't pile in with enough that actually did any damage. And then I got flank charged. My zombies died. My wraiths got held up and flank charged, and it just went wrong.
I think that was the key, wasn't it? That I think I one-shotted your zombies for regiment of zombies, if I'm remembering that right. And then that gave me a chance, as you said, to flank charge your wraiths, who are they're defense 6, aren't they?
Defense 6.
So they're really, really, really scary. And being able to take them off meant then I could just focus on your ghouls, and ghouls are not very good in a grind.
Terrible nerve, defense 3.
Yeah.
It was literally just, you're hitting on 4s, wounding on 2s, they're dead. Next.
And that's where the elite, I mean, with all 3 games, the elite on the elves makes so much difference, doesn't it? Of just re-rolling the ones. It makes things so much more consistent. It'll make a disastrous dice roll into a poor dice roll. It'll make a poor dice roll into an average dice roll, and an average one into a good one, But it was, Danny, thank you. And to be fair, with all of the games, really, I'm sort of probably 75% there with the rules, and I've got an idea of the tactics. But to be honest, the whole way through, Danny was holding my hand, going, "Chris, you're turning like that. You've got the right idea, but look, that's a forest, so you can't see. So just turn a little bit more, And just that attention to detail makes such a huge difference. It's my opponent quote unquote opponent helping me, but it makes a big difference to winning or losing the game in the end. Just having that little bit more attention to detail.
If you hadn't turned those Corsairs an extra, say, 20 degrees, you wouldn't have had the flank charge on my regiment of ghouls, and that could have lost you the game. It's those little angles you've got to constantly right, where are these ones going to go next?
Exactly. Danny could see I had the right idea, but I just the attention to detail wasn't there, so it wasn't quite right. But yeah, fantastic. So it was that game. Yeah, the undead were sent packing, weren't they? Quite brutally, actually. Yay!
You even fell for my trap in the last turn and completely destroyed it. We were playing Hold the Line, the new scenario. And I had my ghouls were in the center box, and I'd killed his Corsairs, and I overran my vampire to stand in front of him going, "Don't kill my unit strength! Don't kill my unit strength!" And he charged into the vampire, killed the vampire, overrun into the ghouls, and then killed them as well. It was a perfect narrative ending.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before I did it, I said, I know this is a trap, and I know I shouldn't. If I'm trying to win the game, I know I should not do this. But I'm going to do this anyway. And absolutely, we went in and we just with vengeance, didn't we, Danny?
Yeah,
we took out all our frustrations of our terrible holiday on those units.
Yeah, it was Twilight King being true to their nature. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I mean, you couldn't have played it any other way. Seriously. So
And I was thinking a little bit earlier, guys, and I haven't definitely. This is a conversation definitely shouldn't have on the pod, but offline. But never mind, we're doing it now. What I was thinking of actually, guys, is if maybe roughly every month or every couple of months, we could just get together and talk about the narrative of so we pick a faction. So I think a good one to start with is Twilight Kin, and we just talk about the lore, and then we talk about how we might apply that to our armies. What's interesting, and we look at the map and we think about it, and just have a nice little chat about the narrative of a faction.
That's a great idea.
That's a good one. Yeah, starting with Twilight Kin's good because I've written a novel for Wing to Star Publishing called Rage and Grace. Unfortunately, I was quite low down the release schedule, and they had it for a year and a half, all the way through COVID. So by the time you started getting around to looking at it, all the background got changed. So now I'm currently going back to my old novel and rewriting everything to fit with the new lore of the Twilight Kin. Yeah. So I've been going through, I've been annotating my Clash of Kings book, picking it out, going through my old story. I was like, well, this doesn't fit anymore. I've got to take that out. I've got to rewrite this bit. So it's really interesting taking certain characters, like we do with the narrative of like a campaign. You've got that bubble. How did this character now fit in this new bubble? And how do I take off those sharp edges to stop the bubble popping?
Chris, Danny, just an aside, it's been so interesting to see the reaction of the players on Facebook, to your campaign. Yeah. But it really has stirred up a lot of imagination and interest, and what a difference your storyline has made to people. I mean, I'm just looking at the comments on Facebook there, and people saying this is great, So I think there should be more of it.
Sitting on the sofa.
Yeah, absolutely. And just imagine if the post had been different, right? Chris and Danny, we played 3 games, and the scenario was push. Yeah, you go, okay, terrific, yeah. And instead of that, the post on Facebook talks about it. There's some great pictures there. I got to also say, for me, it really lit up my heart to see all those painted miniatures, being played. That was great. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you.
Totally, it all tied in, didn't it, Walt? Thematically, it was perfect. They were perfectly painted. It looked exactly like it was
very thematic. In my head.
It was perfect. Yeah,
so
totally.
I'm going to ask you, Danny, because I've got a personal thought about this, right? How do you feel about playing against unpainted armies consistently?
Consistently, life gets in the way of everything.
Yeah.
And some people just don't have the time. If somebody's just managed to stick stuff together, get it on the table, just so they can play, I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
I really don't care. If they just don't care, then I have a problem. It's just like, oh yeah, I've just like, this is like my base, and it's like badly cut cardboard, and they've got a goblin stuck on with blue tape.
Yeah.
Like, you could have at least made an effort to get it on the table.
That's it.
And if there's slow progress, I mean, there's generally when I play a lot of tournaments in the Southeast, generally you always see them painted up. Every now and again it'll be like, this unit's not quite finished, but I really wanted to get it on the table. It's like, yeah, go for it. Awesome. Some guys turn up.
That's not really what we're talking about, though. I'm talking about what you were talking about before, where the same army, and sometimes it's just different units, right? Because they're just recycling units through. Yeah. But the army never gets painted, right? Never gets painted because it's just a piece moving across the board, And for me, playing against an army like that, it takes a lot of fun out of it. It's a difficult one, that one. Yeah, but I thought I'd ask you anyway. Mm-hmm.
It is the immersion issue. I went to a LARP once, and my mate was bigging it up. He was like, "Yeah, it's fantastic. We do all this," and I was expecting Lord of the Rings, and I got there, and it was like Rent a Ghost. And I was expecting this immersion in this fantastic fantasy world. And I was just like some nerd with his horn falling off. Oh, my horn's falling off again. I'm like, oh, God, why am I even here?
I'm sure Mighty Warriors had that problem all the time and complained about it loudly.
So you go to like a tabletop war game, you want to be in that situation. You want to get down low. It like literally being in a movie. You see the units charging in. It's thematic. It's powerful. Or you can just sit at home and play Total War on the laptop on your own.
Yeah.
It's like you go for the community. You go for the experience of playing against somebody else in the flesh. You go for the experience of having these beautiful models on the tabletop in front of you. It's a whole. Some bits can be more important to other people, but as a whole, that's the experience that we want from a game. If somebody's not up to the standard you are, I couldn't care, so long as you're having fun.
That's not important.
There's two.
Come along anyway, we'll lend you one.
Yeah.
Two really important points there. I think, Danny, you hit on it, is the person's attitude.
Yeah.
If they're almost being a little bit disrespectful isn't quite the word, but if they're just sort of, I don't care, I've got grey plastic models on the table, I don't care that yours are painted. They're after a different experience to me, whereas if they're on the journey that, I'm new to the hobby or I'm new to the game, it may not be next month or next year even, but my intention is to get this painted up and looking nice, and I want to go on that journey, then of course absolutely no problem. But for me, the perfect situation is to, as we had, Danny, although I forgot the mat, two beautiful armies, where someone's just put the effort in. I think you don't have to be I'm certainly not the best painter in the world, but it's just someone putting the effort in. I think that's it, isn't it? What it comes down to. And Clem has talked about it on the pod previously. Oh God, I'm sorry guys, I've completely forgotten where I was going with this. My mind's gone.
Look, just getting back to it. I mean, to me, painting something, and it doesn't matter how good it is or whatever, you're just breathing life into it. Yeah. And I think if your opponent doesn't really care about that, etc., and not even trying, then that takes a little bit away from it. That's the only thing, and that's why I was interested in your perspective on that, Danny. Yeah.
Especially with narrative gaming.
Yeah, exactly.
Because you're playing narrative to tell that story. You want to show that story. Otherwise, it's just a game, and that's fine. Playing competitive. Whatever, but for a narrative game, I prefer it to be like nicely painted models, and also because it is a narrative, you're telling a story, I'd love bigger, fancier terrain for it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you go to places. I don't know if you've ever been to Warhammer World, and you go through the exhibition, like, my God, have you seen this terrain? How awesome would it to be playing this? It's one thing that upsets me about going into Games Workshop stores these days. Now they've got all the terrain is. You can buy all this. This is exactly the type of terrain that you need to play this game, and it only costs this much money. Whereas back in the early days, we used to build all big display boards to play on. I mean, 3/4 of the board would be unplayable. You'd have this small little quarter that the armies could play on, but the rest of it was all there just for show. I mean, I had a Bretonian tower. We were nearly scraping the roof.
Nice.
We had ogre pits and everything, and people would come in and go, my God, this is amazing. One of the guys even got a KFC, stripped all the bones, boiled them, sprayed them, and put them on this board as a corpse. It's like, that's nuts. It's insane. But we had so much fun doing it. And people would come in, look at it, it's like, my God, are these real bones? And we're like, shh. They're the bones of the last person who asked. But it's that impact, it's that fun, it's that atmosphere. And just having grey plastic on the table, it's like it loses that atmosphere.
Yeah.
There's a big ladder there right at the top where you've got like the Warhammer World exhibitions, and then you've got like the bottom rung where it's two guys in a working men's club playing on a wooden table because we forgot the mat. We had fun either way, it doesn't matter. But you make do with what you've got. That's what we had, and we made the best of what we had. So if you've got them playing unpainted models and you want to get them on the table, play, have fun. If you're having fun with that narrative, just as long as every time you're improving it, you're trying to give a better experience for yourself, you're trying to give a better experience for your player, and the community bounces back from that. It just slowly increases, makes everything better for everyone. Because if you're around people constantly going, yeah, this is great, look at this, that enthusiasm, it's like, oh, I'm allowed to be enthusiastic about this. It's almost
catching, isn't it?
I call it positive social bullying. It's just like, if you, like, come on, guys, this is great. And you're like, yeah, this is a wave of energy. I want to go surfing on this. I'm going to join in. I'm going to paint these. So what's the thing I love about the Kings of War community is, like, everybody builds themselves up slowly, just a little step up that ladder at a time, and it's cool.
What I love you said there, Danny, was just, if you and your friend are new to this and starting out, you use what you've got, right? So, when you're starting out, sure, two books can be a hill, if that's what you guys want to do, and you're both on the same page. But then it's the kind of the journey of slowly but surely making it look prettier and getting better at this stuff, and of course,
just to give you an idea,
not pretend money doesn't come into it as well, right?
Yeah, and even opponents. Sometimes when I've got a list, I've got a new army, and I want to test it out, I'll play against myself at home. I know the podcasters can't see this, but I'm just going to show you. See that blue rug on the floor behind me? That's my battle mat. I sit on the floor, I get my two armies out, I throw some half-painted unterrain down, and I just play just to see how the units work for competitive aspect, see what the angles I have to watch for, and just so when I get to the table, my opponent's playing me and they're going, what's this unit doing? I'm like, I don't know. I'll just check my sheet, and you're constantly looking at numbers. I just want to be able to go, yeah, they've got 18 attacks, they're hitting on this, they're rolling on this, great. So I can just keep that momentum going, enjoy the game without going, I'll just check my rule book, I'm not really sure about this. And I mean, I'm an experienced gamer, I should know all this stuff. Somebody coming into it, looking at your rule books, and I mean, I play lots of tournaments, even I'm like, can I do this? I've got an idea. What do you think? And I say, in the Kings of War community, I know I'm going to get a nice answer, and we're going to look at it logically. In other games, it'd be like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't do that. Look in this rule book. Well, now I've got to look through the entire rule book to find this one little rule that you say I can't do this for. It just adds to aggravation. It just makes an unpleasant game. You just want things to flow nicely. You make do with what you've got.
That happened a load of times in our games, Danny, didn't it? Where I was sort of like, I've got this crazy plan to do X. How can I do it legally within the rules? And then you're like, okay, well, move this guy to here and then move this unit around here. And it happens a lot with charges. Like, can I multi-charge here with these two units? And you're like, yeah, move that one first, and it lines up like that. And it's but you simply, as you said, you simply don't get that in other games. In other games, you'd be, the other person might have the opinion, well, you should know the rules to this game that we're playing, right? You shouldn't have to ask, or I don't know, whatever it might be. It's just different. And maybe if other people enjoy it in a different way to us, that's fine. That's fine. We're not saying what we're doing is inherently better, but it's just, for us, this is what we want to play and the experience we want to have. And Danny, if we go back to Walt's 4 different types of player, which I'm just wondering what sort of type of player you are. So what do you think is more important to you? Is it kind of the community aspect, and that would make you a Hearts? Or is it the unfold, as Walt, I think, are you a diamond, Walt? Is that what we said?
No, I'm a spade.
You're a spade. You're the spade. You're a digger, that's right.
Spades, we immerse ourselves in the story, and we typically, lose track of all the other important stuff, like the rules, for instance, right? How many dice have I got to roll? So, we're more interested in the story that's coming out of it. And the diamonds, they're the people that are looking, obviously, for the points, gathering points, and moving up tables.
Achieving something and improving.
Achieving something.
Yes. Getting better at the game.
Getting better at the game. And it's the killers, right? They're the clubs, right? They're the ones that will want to win at all costs. Even in fact, they want to see people lose, and they. But look, there is a place for the killers. Chris, you asked me this question before, and you put me on the spot, and I've thought about it. The killers are really the stress testers of our game system, right? They're the ones that stress test the rules.
Exactly.
And they're the ones that fill up the inbox of the rules committee, right? In terms of,
totally. I think you're exactly right.
With the combinations of X, Y, Z, and why can't I do this and whatever. And so we need the killers because they will sort out.
You could also make the argument, without the killers, we wouldn't have to worry about this.
Possibly, yeah, that's true.
Because no one else would be doing that.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be me, that's for sure.
It's
No.
interesting. In the middle of all that, Walt, you used the phrase stress test. I use that all the time when I'm writing characters. It's like,
oh, that's interesting.
Chris went to the. It's like, what happened today for Chris? Chris went to the shops. He came home. Blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
Chris's character has not been stress tested by going to the shops. If Chris goes to the shops and there's a gunman holding up the cashier, Chris is now in a stressful situation. Chris is being stress tested. What does Chris do in this situation? That's a good story.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stress test characters, so you can put that into your narrative as well. Okay, this character, this army's going into this situation. You stress test it. You put it under that difficult situation, and it's those difficult situations that make more compelling stories. So even though you've got the killers in competitive, you can also put the killers into narrative, and by stress testing those characters and those ideas, you get a better story out of it.
Yeah,
and
very
maybe
good.
the best stress test, for example, if we have a holy Basilian knight or paladin or whatever, presumably the ultimate stress test for them is going to be against evil. You could have them against the Trident Realm or something like that, which would be fine. But it feels like if they're fighting against the Abyss or the Undead or something really truly evil, that's the ultimate stress test for them, I guess.
I'd say no, because they're a high paladin. They've got so much personal faith. They've got so much personal. They've killed huge amounts of enemies to get where they're getting. To be, a knight in medieval times had trained for like 6 hours a day. Killing people, killing monsters is a paladin's bread and butter. That is not stress testing them. What's stress testing them is putting them in a difficult situation where they've got to choose between one thing or another. So what's more important to High Paladin Danielle of the Celestial Grove? Is it saving the village, killing the enemies of Basilia? And how does she do that? If she goes out and kills this one threat, she might be saving more people. Or does she stay in the village, defend it against the undead, those people that she doesn't know? That's the stress test of the character. What does she do in that situation?
Fascinating. And then she has to live with the consequences of her decision of maybe she let the people of the village die and she has to carry that with her.
But the point you make, Danny, that's the start of a storyline that goes even further and further and further, right? You can go off in all sorts of different directions. Yeah.
And now, if you've played a little game, you might think, I really like High Paladin Danielle. I feel like some kind of emotional contact with this character. I might actually, go for my ambush game and add some more characters and build my army up around Danielle of the Celestial Grove.
Yeah.
And I only named it Celestial Grove because they've all got shields. I gave them different shields with trees on them.
Yeah,
so
that's interesting, Danny. Yeah, what I just heard was you'll build around Danielle, the paladin, right? But you won't necessarily build according to a stat line. You build according to what are the right troops to put around her. I mean, they could be the most basic of troops, right? Yeah, depending on the storyline.
Yeah.
This is Ronnie Renton, and you are listening to the Mantic Universe podcast.
Originally, my idea for my Basilians was I wanted to do an all-girl Basilian army because I just love the idea of fighting nuns. It's like I say, with stress testing a character.
Yeah.
A nun is quite pious in our traditional real world. They're quite pious. They get up early. They tend the gardens. They go to mass. They pray.
Yeah.
What would happen if they also had to fight and kill? How does that religious mentality translate to living in a battlefield situation?
Yeah.
So all my paladins, I converted them all up. They've all got double-handed swords and they've all got girls' heads. I call them my galadins because they're all gals. So
very good. You're giving me flashbacks of Drowned Secrets, by the way, and those nuns weren't so holy. That's all I'm going to say. I'll end it there.
Yeah. So.
Sorry, Danny, go ahead, buddy.
I've forgotten now. Go.
Speaking of which, I long remembered my point, which the conversation's gone way past it. The bit I forgot about earlier was, I think Clem would say if you're playing with unpainted models and you're never planning on painting them, and you're playing on a kitchen table or whatever with no real terrain, that banana is a paladin or whatever, then you may as well play video games, right? Because if you're not interested in the visual aspect of the hobby, Clem would say, just go and play Total War or whatever,
Yeah,
don't worry about it.
You can still enjoy it, but it doesn't give you the full. It's the same as watching. You come in at home and watch. You sit there and watch Coronation Street. You know what's going to happen. You know it's boring, but for some reason you get a little bit of enjoyment out of it at that time. It's not like going to see Avatar at the cinema with 3D goggles on. You still sat watching something. You're getting a different experience. Going to see something like that, it's like, whoa, man!
You're getting the full immersive experience, yes. And Walt, why don't you talk a little bit about your orcs that will soon be gracing Clash of Kings Australia, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if you know this, Danny. I'm taking the Scar Orcs, right? Yeah, and the Scar Orcs have got a storyline attached to them as well. I mean, orcs are very adventurous. They like going, the typical trope, which is, going into other lands and looting and pillaging and things like that. But the Scar Orcs are finding themselves in a bit of a situation where the wells are drying up around them, and the food and the wild around them is dying out, and they're really being forced into a migration. So they now need to move into other lands. And, of course, the lands that they move into are the lands of the humans and the elves and all the other things. And basically, the storyline is compelling me to build that force. And I've done that. And a lot of basic troops are in there. Look, there are some what I would call probably some really good troops, but most of them are basic troops because the whole tribe's moving. And Chris asked me this question, and he said, "Well, you're going to go to Clash of Kings Australia. Are you going to take your orcs?" I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "Have you thought about Riftforge orcs?" And I went, "No, I'm not changing it. I'm not turning them into Riftforge orcs, right? Because that's not who they are, right?" And I'm not going to optimise them either, to win a tournament, so to speak. Yeah, there's 2,300 points of it, and they're going to be true to themselves, and they're going to go have a go. And some of those games that we'll have at the tournament, for me, there'll be some really funny dice rolls, and there'll probably be some legendary stuff that comes out of that. And I'll adopt that into the storyline of the Scar Orcs and then move on and keep playing them in more narrative games. But they participate in tournament games as well, yeah.
See, my first thought when you said that was like Scar Orcs. Why are they called Scar Orcs? Have they got some like scarification ritual that they have to go through when they're a young orc to prove that they're one of the tribe?
You're right on top of it.
Does that make them quite a savage side so they won't have any technology like a chariots? Are they all foot based? Do they have more monsters because there's more monsters are in there? Just the word scar gives them more of a primitive feel, and that's a narrative thing you can play on.
Yeah, you've picked that up beautifully. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that name took a long time to sort of like come about. Come about, and I'm destroying the furniture around here, but it's interesting you picked up on that. Yeah, so that's exactly right. It influences some of the other things about the force composition, and I'm not going to change it. I'm just not. But I'll take them to a tournament, and they'll do okay. Yeah. But But if I was going to be a true tournament player, I would probably have to scrap half of that army and put some really hard-hitting stuff in there, to try and get to the top table, so to speak. And that's not the sort of player I am.
So I was talking to Chris about this. You can still play with CAC units.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if the units are bad. That's it. It's all about learning how to play with them. You'll find weird situations where you'll come up against lists, go, oh, those units are rubbish, I'm going to walk through this. And all of a sudden, you're in a really bad situation. You go, oh, actually, I've been outplayed here. So it doesn't matter how good the units are, even the hard-hitting stuff, you can still win with bad stuff.
Well, yeah, actually, it's an interesting point. It's an interesting point, Danny, because really, if you're a really skilled player, right, you should be able to use the most basic units to achieve really good stuff.
So I'm certain if Danny was actually trying, you could give him a rubbish list and give me, the scariest meta list. Danny's going to win. He's going to win the game because Kings of War doesn't work like other games.
No, right.
They're trying to balance. The intention is they're never going to perfectly balance 29 armies, whatever. It's impossible. But, if you want that, play chess. But the intention is it's balanced. So, when we're talking about bad units, when it was play tested, it was agreed, they're not bad. So it's not like none of the units in the game. I mean, actually, maybe we could have a MUP Shorts on. Are any of the units in the game completely worthless? But as a general rule, if you've got some infantry, okay, maybe another type of infantry is 20% better or something. But it's not like you have absolutely no chance, right? Danny's going to beat if he wants to win. He's going to beat me as a good player. He's going to beat me 9 times out of 10. With whatever army, just because he's good at the game, because it's about movement, it's about skill, it's about anticipating things, it's about planning 2-3 turns in advance. And as Danny was saying to me, and I'll just say this on the pod because it's so important, Danny was saying to me, Chris, how are you going to win the game? It's the objectives. So don't worry about my army so much. Think about how you're going to, by the end of the game, be on the objective points or have the tokens or whatever it is. And by the way, Danny brought beautiful tokens. It wasn't just blank discs on the board. They looked pretty. And I think that's the difference between an okay player and a good player. Well, one of them, other than they're more precise, etc., but all round better player, is that Danny was just thinking about how am I going to win the game every turn. He was just going back to that simple point. Yeah. And he won most of the games.
Well, there you go.
Super, but this is very much in canon now for my Twilight Kin army. This happened. This was because I've played a couple of games of Ambush before, but this is going in canon now of the story of our adventure to this little village in outside of Sparta, where we got absolutely slaughtered. We made it out.
Chris, I think revenge is your only option.
Yeah.
Revenge, yeah. I mean, you're going to have to go back here. You can't take this lying down, right? I mean, those Basileans need another visit. Come
and have a go if you think you're hard enough.
I might come. I don't, but I might come and have a go anyway. And it was funny though. I think in game 2, Danny said, "Chris, has anyone challenged you for the first round of Clash of Kings?" And I said, "Yes, they have. Thank you very much. They call me the gold mine. I'm 3 points. Come this way." Yes, I will be destroyed by Tom King's goblins in round 1.
Well, that's good, Chris, because last Clash of Kings, he destroyed me round 1 with his goblins.
Oh, good. It's those mints. I'm terrified of the mincers. It's that big shield. Yeah.
I played really well, but the very first turn, because I hadn't played Maguire and Jews before, and you just get there, you're like setting up. I didn't look at the list properly, and I failed to notice he had wild charge D3, and I just left him within the wild charge, and he rolled that 5 and 6, got in, and that held up 1 unit, which meant I couldn't get across the next turn, and it's just like a cascade effect, and he beat me. The mincers didn't do much because I outplayed the mincers. I know how to deal with them. Just threw chaff in, blocked them up. They couldn't really do much, but because I messed up that flank on the first turn, I couldn't swing in to the turn where they needed to be, and I lost.
Just put you behind where you needed to be. Fantastic, super, guys. I mean, to be honest, I think we could talk all day about narrative stuff, but I think. Yeah, so going forward, I love my own idea, which I always do, of course, dear listener, of us just having narrative episodes talking about the different factions. I very much hope you guys will join me for that. On a monthly or maybe bi-monthly basis or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, where we can just get excited about factions. And
absolutely,
if there's a listener who's interested in an army, maybe we can, rather than talking about they hit on 4s, no, they hit on 3s, that stuff. We can what gets us excited about playing a particular army other than the maths, exciting maths.
And what we did in this one as well was we basically took what we had and made a story out of it. And the other side of that is picking a story and fitting what you've got into that story. So if you've watched a film or you've read a book and you go, that's awesome, I want to replay that on the battlefield in a narrative way, you look at what you've got and how you can put that in, or you can build towards that. I mean, let's play a quick game. Name me a science fiction film or a fantasy film, something epic that's inspired you. It could be small. It could just go for it. Hit me with one.
We got to say the Lord of the Rings. Come on.
Okay, so now Lord of the Rings, big epic one in there. You've got the Battle of Pelennor Fields, so you can take your Scar tribe of orcs, get them all at the front and attacking a big castle. You could have Basilians defending that castle, change the name of some of the characters, and then put in, like, every turn from turn 3 onwards, you roll to see when your reinforcements come into the flank, you've got the Rohirrim, things like that. So all of a sudden, you've taken that one big idea and you're going to play it on the battlefield, how you want to play it. Even smaller games, I mean, The Thing, John Carpenter film, All in the Snow, you could play that.
One of my favourite films of all time, Danny.
So what you could do is you could play Deadzone, literally just get a big bit of cardboard, spray it white, dry brush it a little bit, do a little grid on it, put some like small buildings on, and then you could have a GCPS team just for one game, pull the heads off them, get some of the Northern Alliance tribes heads, paint them, blue tack them on your GCPS for one game so they look like Kurt Russell, and basically go in your bits box, take a load of tentacles and heads and stuff, stick them all together, quickly paint it, dry brush it, do some details. You've got the thing, and use that as a Plague Lord and play a Deadzone game, except every round, when you cause a wound on it, it disappears and you randomly roll to see which guy it is now. That guy then attacks. That guy then becomes your force. And when you kill him, the thing comes out. And so you can make a small narrative game, just play the thing. And all you've had to do is paint up some heads, have a fun day building up a weird monster from your bits box.
Yeah.
Like stick it on a base. You've got one of those monsters for the undead army, a shambling blight, whatever they call it, gore blight.
Absolutely amazing. Or you can do the same for Starship Troopers or whatever you're interested in, and you can just play the kind of games that you're really passionate about. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's simple. I mean, just take a cork board. You could do a small game, just spray it, get some black paint, stick some sand in it, mix it up, paint it up, dry brush it grey. You've got a nice grey terrain, play something on a moon. What we did once was we got a jigsaw and just found a load of MDF sheeting in a skip. We cut it all out into like long, weird twisting shapes and basically made modular caverns and and wrote rules for fighting in caverns, like models can't fly. They have to use the ground movement, but they can't fly. Things can only see so far because of the darkness. It's simple things like that. Just to let your brain go wild, but you're choosing those cool stories. You're thinking, how can we do this?
I'm also thinking, to be honest, Danny, Clash of Kings UK will all be there. Maybe we can do we can all bring a 750-point ambush army, and we can just play a little the night before or whatever. Find a time that we can just all sit down and tell some more stories with each other.
Play some side games.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Perfect, guys. That was absolutely fascinating. Is there anything we haven't touched on?
Loads, but we can say that for another podcast, Chris.
It's the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? Yeah, to be fair. Fantastic. But yes, guys, thank you so much for joining me. And it's New Year's Day. Well, Happy New Year.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, and Happy New Year to you guys.